Hello, hello. Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are. And welcome everyone to today's webinar titled From Cost to Catalyst, Strategic Tech Investment as a Driver for Change. Today's session is brought to you by the team at Dayshape in collaboration with Inflo. We appreciate you taking the time to join us today, and we're excited to dive into the discussion. Just gonna give it about a minute or so to let our colleagues join. But thank you everyone for attending today. Okay. Before we start the discussion, I wanted to start with a little bit of housekeeping as we wait for more people to join as they hop from meeting to meeting. So I want to make you familiar with today's platform. At the bottom of your screen, you'll see multiple engagement tools that you can use. All these tools are resizable and movable, so feel free to adjust them to suit your needs. You can expand your slide area or maximize it to full screen by clicking on the arrows in the top right corner. For the best viewing experience, we recommend closing any programs or browser sessions running in the background that could cause any bandwidth issues. Please note that for some of you, your networks might cause a small delay on slides. If your slides fall behind from where the discussion is, simply by pressing F5 on your keyboard, it will refresh the page. If you run into any issues with the platform, you can find some answers to some common technical issues in the Help engagement tool at the bottom of your screen. If you have any questions during the webcast, please don't be shy. We really want this to be a fruitful discussion and that you walk away with something actionable. So please submit them through the Q&A engagement tool that you'll see on your screen there. We will try to answer as many as possible during the session, but if we need more time or more detail, we'd be happy to follow up with email afterwards. There are some additional helpful materials available to download in the resource list, so I wanted to point you to that. And finally, an on-demand version of this webinar will be available shortly after we finish today, so you can catch up and share with colleagues. So we'll be sending that over to you. Okay, and with that, thanks again for joining us today. So before we jump in, let's take a moment to introduce our speakers and really set the stage for today's discussion. So this webinar is really designed with you, the attendee, in mind. We're going to be focusing on real-world insights and practical strategies for making technology a real driver at your firm. So while we'll be sharing vendor perspectives on technology and related implementation, our goal is to make this a valuable and relevant discussion for you. So I'll kick it off. My name is Ryan Najmulski, based outside of Austin, Texas. I head up customer success with Dayshape. If you don't know, Dayshape is an AI-powered resource management platform specializing in professional services and used by some of the world's largest public accounting, consulting, and marketing firms in the world. We have a really, really great panel of speakers today, so I'm going to pass it over to each of them to briefly introduce themselves. So I'm going to start with Rob.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. My name's Robert Lemmon. I'm the Chief Audit Partner with Inflo. Inflo's an audit solution which has work papers, it has analytics, it has ingestion and client collaboration. So we got a broad range of audit tools, and we work with a number of firms globally. We're in about 116 countries and a lot in the UK, US, and all over the globe. So my background is in audit, 18 years as an auditor, including 12 years in the US and 7 years as a partner. So I'm really happy to talk audit and tech with today. If anyone's got any questions on any of those topics, be happy to cover those, but really glad to be here and appreciate everyone's time.
Rob, thank you so much. Happy to have you. I'm going to pass it over to Kate.
Thanks, Ryan. Hi, my name's Kate Brooke. I'm the resource management leader at Moss Adams. I've been working in the public accounting space at Moss Adams for about 18 years, and I have been a part of our resource management team for the past 12 years. And today I lead the firm-wide resource management team of about 40 professionals across the US and India. And I work with our assurance, tax, and consulting firm leadership to align our people experience, our strategic workforce planning, and our deployment strategies.
Kate, thank you so much for the introduction. Thanks again for joining. And Bronwen, over to you.
Thanks, Ryan. Hi, so I'm Bronwen De Abreu, and I'm a Audit Data Analytics Senior Manager, London-based, at a UK-based audit firm called MHA, part of the Baker Tilly Group. Similar to Rob, I have been in audit for quite some time, but in various roles. So that being as an auditor, also a tutor and a technical trainer, to more recently looking at audit data analytics integration within the audit practice. And currently I lead deployment and adoption of audit software within the audit service line, and I look at other opportunities or vendors to use and implement.
Great, thank you so much, Bronwen. So today's discussion is going to focus on really 3 key areas. The first one, investing in the right technology. This is where we will cover how to assess and select the best solutions before making a change. The second key area is managing tech implementation. How to ensure a really smooth transition to a new technology product and all of the change management required around that. And finally, maximizing return on investment and driving business transformation. So this is really where we'll hone in on making sure technology delivers real value after implementation. So to kick things off, I'm going to hand it over to Rob to cover the first section on investing in the right technology. Over to you, Rob.
Thank you, Ryan. All right, well, appreciate you setting the stage there. And I'll dive into that first section around investing in the right technology, recognizing the need for preparing for tech implementation as well. And what I've seen in my experience is seeing right now a fairly major strategic shift as it relates to audit technology. Now, I'm not sure if this is new normal with a lot of firms change, a generational change we're seeing right now. That we look back in the rearview mirror and realize we're at an inflection point right now with significant level of change happening now that might slow down in the future. But right now there's a heck of a lot of change, is my point, and there's different schools of thought here as it relates to that change specifically to tech. And how it's being used by audit firms. And there's different schools of thought. One that I've seen is that want everything from one vendor kind of under one umbrella. It's kind of vendor agnostic. They don't mind. They'll evaluate each tool individually and in their ecosystem as a selection. Just a cost that just takes time to implement and evaluate and isn't worth the effort. And I'm not here to sell or promote any thing between bucket 1 or bucket 2. Inflo is more of a bucket 1, but I'm not here to promote one or the other 3. I will say that, because what I am seeing, I've got real examples of firms who have embraced that new tech, getting both quality and efficiency gains. So certainly, whether you think everything is best under one vendor umbrella or you think picking and choosing from a section of vendors is a better approach, there's validity to both of those. But I don't want firms to fall behind the curves, if you will. So that's just my little bit of experience that I wanted to share. But what I really wanted to do in this section is pick the brains from Kate and Bronwen, our experts, with a few questions. So I'll start off with Kate, if I may, and start with you to ask, what were the inefficiencies or challenges or pain points that you observed that made you realize that it was time to invest in new tech? What kind of thing had you seen in the past that made you realize, oh, now's the time, Kate?
Yeah, absolutely. We were facing challenges across a lot of different areas. We had challenges in our reporting. We had challenges with a lack of data integration in our current tools, connecting to other tools that we were utilizing across the firm. we were seeing challenges in managing individual employee skill sets and matching those with the correct job requirements. And we were seeing more and more segments of our organization who are asking for specific resourcing solutions and were ready to go out and find technology that was going to meet their needs on their own. So we were looking additionally for ways to identify opportunities to impact employees, their career growth, keep folks energized and keep them up to date with technology, impact their utilization, and provide more insight to our entire organization related to staffing decisions. And when we step back and look at all of those different pieces, the struggle to produce data efficiently and effectively because of different tools and tools that may be lacking in some areas. When we looked at our processes and saw that those were inconsistent, it was a really good indicator that we needed to take a look at current technologies and think about whether or not they are serving us at that moment in time and if they were going to serve us in the future. And we knew that was a great opportunity once we did that to really address pain points that we were hearing across a bunch of different user groups by looking for new technology solutions in the resource management space.
Well, it definitely sounds like you were feeling the pain. And you mentioned something there that I really liked as well. That's just consistent with what I'd seen around the data, the lack of data with the old systems, and the by making the leap and you use the word opportunity, not looking at it as a cost but as an opportunity to move into something far better, especially in the area of data, I think is really a strong advantage. So I'm glad you're seeing those benefits, and in some ways I'm glad you felt the pain, because I'm sure you're feeling the rewards on the other side. But let me take it to Bronwen next for my next question, if I may. Bronwen, once you'd recognized the need for change and made that sort of mentality shift, that mental decision in your organization that a change was going to come, how did you justify the investment in the technology to the key stakeholders? And were there any arguments that helped to shift the perspective from a cost to an opportunity, or to show the value of this strategic asset? What did you do, Bronwen?
Sure, Rob. Yeah, and I think following on from what Kate has just said there, they're kind of those challenges and pain points. Once you've accepted them, and it makes it quite easy to justify it to those key stakeholders that this needs addressing. Over and above that, it's not something that we can't ignore. It's expected. So if we're not addressing it, when we employ new staff or experienced hires, they'd be asking, I'm so used to using this type of technology where I was before. Do you have something like this, an equivalent? How are you operating without this? Over and above that, just people asking for it, it was, we're seeing more from our regulator or from our boards, that it's becoming now an industry expectation with the regulator and certain boards, not backing so much, but saying, yeah, this is how, or some vendors that we think work well and that you could partner with. So if they're saying it, why are we not acting on it? So that's definitely one of the justifications. And not only that we're going to make our people happy by addressing this, but there is also, if you don't do it, there's a cost of inaction. So that's the justification itself. So either way, you're going to have a cost. Either you're going to move with the times, or you're going to take that cost of an inaction. And certainly it's a competitive market. And if all of your competitors are moving in line with it, you are going to feel it when you start losing your clients who also say, I've come from this firm, they did this great thing, why can't you do it? And to add to that, with the increased expectations in the market, it helps us then get quality of those outputs. So what, like you mentioned, what Kate mentioned, that inconsistency that we were getting, this helps address that.
Yeah, that's two very compelling points there. If you can't hire new staff and the regulators are going to be against you, you don't want to be in that situation. And when I was an audit partner, the hiring of new staff, we were constantly being reminded that the pipeline of students in accounting schools is not meeting the demand when you project forward retirement ages and then just the demand in the market. So that was always a really compelling thought for me, is I need to find other ways to make my firm appealing to new generations. And like you said, you layer on top of that the regulatory aspect. Well, that's two pretty strong arguments. But to keep things moving, sorry, I'm slowing us down here. But for our third question, I'll go back to you, Kate, if I may. With so many tech solutions in the market, how did you decide what was the right fit for your firm? And were there any key criteria that you considered?
Yeah, it's a great question. We had been discussing the pain points, what we wanted to achieve for several years before we were ready to start looking for a resource management solution. And because we took the time to evaluate our processes and our systems, by the time we were ready to look at solutions, technology had really advanced. And we had established a structured plan and those key criteria to really find the right thing. I think the process of us identifying the key criteria was almost as important as the criteria that we ended up looking at. You know, we brought in stakeholders from across our organization to be involved in system selection, to be involved in our implementation. They were leaders across different business units, influencers, both positive and negative, from different groups, maybe folks who aren't in a leadership position but had strong influence in other areas. And we did design thinking sessions, we did empathy mapping, we talked about future solution brainstorming and thinking about what is our process going to look like in 3 years, in 4 years, what criteria do we need today to take us out into the future. And we did all of that work before we even sent out a RFP. It made it very easy for us to center around criteria before any demos. And what we focused on, and some of the more important pieces for us, were going back to the data, those connected systems, the ability to connect data points across various platforms, the ability to customize a tool, but also provide holistic views of that data. Strong reporting capabilities was a very key requirement across all of our groups, and also just a good user interface. We want people to like to interact with the technology that we're using. And we identified those key criteria, and then we took that into our vendor selection process. So we used those as our scorecard. So as we went through each demo, we were able to rate and have all of our different stakeholders rate how did this vendor meet or exceed or not meet the key criteria that we'd been discussing and planning on and thinking about for a long period of time before we even got into the demo. It made it really easy for us to kind of evaluate systems and tools to pull that all together and see what those responses were after we demoed software.
Fantastic. That's a really good, robust process, and it's what I see from a lot of the firms who have really gone about this in a strategic fashion. I'm going to try and recap the key points because there's a lot of good items in there. I want to make sure the audience captured them all. So step one was to, before you even went to market, was to have a really clear vision internally of what you wanted. And that included things like the level of customizability, if that's a word, as well as the level of strength around data capabilities in there as well. So you had that really strong, clear picture. You leveraged that and created it into a scorecard that you could use in standard against any of the vendors. So you were benchmarking everyone against each other in a consistent fashion, as well as, you said, getting the buy-in and the involvement of all relevant stakeholders and a really broad group of stakeholders. And that's one of the things I hear time and again is absolutely critical for long-term implementation success, is having everyone's buy-in, that belief, that excitement, maybe even behind the change. I'm just curious, and you may not know off the top of your head, so I'm throwing you a curveball here. How long was your total process approximately? Do you recall how long from kind of deciding to start searching to making final decisions? Because it always surprises me it's longer than people think, is my experience. But what do you recall, or do you mind sharing roughly how long yours was?
Yeah, certainly. And I won't have the exact start date to end date, but we spent the majority, I would say 6 to 8 months of 2022 going through this process. So gathering the stakeholders, doing those design thinking workshops, and then ending it with our vendor demos and our scorecards and coming to a final decision. So it was a thoughtful process expanded over a pretty big period of time.
Yeah, no, that's consistent. I think that's consistent with what I see as a really good, thorough process for firms, like really large firms. Because some people come to me on calls, they're almost apologetic. They say, "Look, we're not going to be doing anything this year," and big billion-dollar firms. And I'm like, that's not expected at all. You wouldn't be doing it justice if you were planning to wrap it up in a couple of months. Now, obviously, other firms of other sizes can be more agile, move at different paces, but yeah, it's not uncommon for it to take months for these decisions. That's just from my experience. But well, I think everyone's probably heard enough of my voice for now, so I'll take a little break. Those were really terrific insights from you both, so thank you for those. Ryan, I'm going to kick it back to you, and you can cover the next stage in our webinar here today. Back to you, Ryan.
Thanks, Rob. And one thing I really took from the previous section there is both Kate and Bronwen mentioned technology is really a driver for employee experience, employee retention, and as a competitive advantage for attracting talent. So I think that's smart and bang on, and just really hope that everyone can view it that way. So as a reminder, guys, please jump in the Q&A. I'm starting to see some questions come in, but if we can expand on anything, we'd love to hear from you. So now that we've covered recognizing the need for change, what happens next? Well, actually implementing the technology and all the change and operational rigor that comes on the back of that. So according to a recent McKinsey study, they say 70% of digital transformation projects fail due to poor adoption strategies and framework. So that's why having a structured approach, some of you may have heard of Kotter's 8-step model or ProSize AgCore model. I'm sure there's a couple other ones out there. If you have any good change management frameworks, drop it in the chat. I'd love to hear more. But really that can make all the difference. And so, beyond these frameworks though, it's really about communication, training and enablement, and leadership. So the new tool, especially at an enterprise level, will only be successful if people are using it, obviously, using it in the intended way. And that really starts with clearly explaining why it matters and how it makes their lives easier. And that really can't be done without having executive buy-in. All the way from executives to mid-level managers, that they are definitely singing off the same hymn sheet as to why we're making this change and can really help enable success there. So want to dig into this, get some real world tips, best practices, experiences from our panel here. So Bronwen, I'll start with you. So from your experience, when rolling out new technology, what were some of the biggest challenges you encountered? And how did that sort of impact the company? How did that impact you in your role? And tell us more about your experience with that.
Sure. And I think you get that excitement once it's been approved and you can now actually adopt and deploy that. Actually, that's just the very beginning of the task. And one of the first hurdles that I've encountered is actually you've been in this test environment or this demo environment, and making sure that your IT infrastructure and that everyone that needs access and who's identified correctly can get access. This, if you get it wrong, can delay deployments. So we've had it, or how that's impacted us. You set out your policies, you're all excited, you've got all the training out, but then you have multiple people that weren't identified appropriately within the business while you're talking, or they don't have access to it. And it highlighted to us that actually our internal data was perhaps inconsistent in the labeling, which helped us reassess our how do we label people as audit or different service lines to ensure that they've got proper access and immediate access to the software? I mean, you're stumbling at the first hurdle. So that was one of the challenges, is having the correct access. And I mean, that coming with that is things like single sign-on instead of just using an email and password, which the people that didn't have access tried to attempt. One of the other challenges is, of course, is having a receptive audience. So as much as I can be excited, if you don't have that receptive audience, if it's their busy season and you're implementing change, you're hitting a brick wall. So it's making sure that you are timing, just because it's ready, making sure that you deploy it when they are receptive to taking on that change. And like you mentioned there, Ryan, that we communicate in the best way possible how this is going to add value to the work that they're doing. And that communication is really key, and that you are driving forward that value add and what they're getting out of it. On the other side, what was quite a highlight was, if you've achieved all of those hurdles and your staff are excited to use it and using it, only to have your client turn around and say, I don't like this. I'm a bit scared in my use of it, is making sure that you do empower your staff to onboard external clients and using that software too, because they can't use it if the client's not on board as well. So those are just some of the challenges. One last one that I'd like to add is, sometimes we focus on the actual users of the software, and there's perhaps a culture of where your higher up people that don't get their hands dirty might take a step back and go, I don't need to hear this training, or this is not for me. They'll get on with it. And actually, you need buy-in from everyone. And even if your higher up people or management aren't going to use it, they need to see the impact that it'll have to really drive its use.
Bronwen, that's totally awesome. And I'd like to actually just answer one of the Q&As that came in, because I think it's pretty spot on. But you mentioned earlier, Bronwen, the cost of inaction, which I think is really good, and kind of similar to that. What do you see as the biggest risk or issues that might arise if I guess if a company's not adapting to change quickly and accordingly? So that's from Kidan in the audience. Thanks for the question.
Yeah, so for our business and audit, it'll be that you lose your competitiveness when going out to tender and winning new client work, because they are now expecting a way for us to work with their information in a faster, more efficient way. And if they're used to that from somewhere else, we're unfortunately going to lose clientele. And like I mentioned before, having happy staff, so that attractiveness of being an employee, we lose that too. So yeah, that cost is huge. And already within audit and accounting, it's already a scarce job market out there to get skilled people. So yeah, huge risk and costs involved due to inaction.
Great. Thank you, Bronwen. I want to come back to you here in a minute, but Kate, wanted to tap on you to really kind of talk about leadership, and Bronwen alluded to that as well. But from what we see, executive sponsorship really can be the make or break factor in any implementation. And so we live in a world where there's a lot of change. I think one of you guys mentioned, the regulatory change as well. So it's just constant change, and if there's one thing that accountants love is change, right, Rob? I'm kidding. But Kate, how did leadership influence the success of your tech adoption at Moss Adams? I'm sorry. And what actions do you think made the big difference?
Yes, executive sponsorship is absolutely crucial. There can be a misconception that a change in technology is going to resolve all of the issues that have existed with your process and things that have been happening, and that it's just not the case. And executive sponsorship, they can help speak to the larger vision of your firm, speak to the vision of where we want to go in the future, help set realistic expectations around the challenges of change and the change journey and what the long-term benefits might be. And they're in a very good position to do that because your teams are used to hearing from them and hearing them speak about those visions and where your organization is going. We had our CEO speaking to our resource management strategy, as well as the technology implementation and the transformation of our resource management technology during town hall meetings throughout this process that we went through in our implementation and even still today. So highlighting the importance of it at a firm-wide level has had a huge, huge impact for us and has been one of the key items that has helped with the success of adoption of the technology. Our stakeholders who are involved in our process, they have also been very, very helpful, ensuring that they know what's going on, that they're able to answer questions, that they know where to send those questions and can find the answers that they need to relay them back to their individual teams. Also really valuable. You will have a strong functional leader as you implement a technology. However, that leader is going to need to be standing side by side with your executive leadership, saying the same things, because things are heard differently when they're coming from different individuals across the firm. And executive sponsors and partner leaders can really help to connect the dots between what might feel like an administrative change when deploying a technology, and they can connect those dots with your employees on how it really is going to impact their career and their ability to serve external clients. I can stand up as a resource management leader and talk about that all day long, and I know it's going to impact some folks. And having an executive sponsor, having partner leadership saying those same things is going to have an even stronger impact and showcase the importance and the value that it's bringing to the firm on a larger scale.
That's so great, Kate. And going to ask you probably an unfair question, but the good old hindsight is 2020, right? And so, if you recall this implementation that you went through, if you had to do it all over again, what would you have done differently in your process? Any other advice that you haven't mentioned yet that you would give to other firms considering a similar implementation of this size?
Yeah, I would say putting more emphasis on the stakeholders that you have involved along the way. I think there can be a tendency to add on to people's day-to-day responsibilities when we go through technology changes and say, oh, great, you're part of the committee to implement and test this software. But really emphasizing the importance and the value of those individuals, the value in their feedback, the value in their involvement and what it's bringing to the implementation. And that also, if you can put more value on that, it'll boost and amplify their voices afterwards and help with the adoption. So I think in hindsight, could have done more around that. Also articulating, what does the first day of implementing a new technology look like? What does the first 100 days look like? What does the first month or first year or second year look like? Again, a problem isn't solved just by a go live of a technology solution. There is going to be value that is built and gained over time. And I think looking back, we could have articulated that even more strongly so that people knew what to expect. And they knew if we were going to be asking them to do something on day one that was going to impact the data and the value we were going to see 1 year down the line. So my overall advice, I guess, if I haven't said it, it's challenging. Technology change doesn't resolve process issues. Even if you have really great plans, even if you have integrated change management, everyone's not going to make it through your change journey. It is true. And you have to be able to transparently emphasize the challenges that are going to come along with technology implementation. and the positive outcomes, but you can't just focus on the positivity and what wonderful things you're going to gain. You do need to be transparent and realistic with folks that we will be asking you to do something differently. It may be more difficult. It may feel more difficult, and here's why. People want authentically to understand what the reality will be and not just to be sold some future vision of perfection.
You know, if I were to just kind of summarize the last few minutes, it's change does not happen on its own. Really, really need to be intentional about it in order to be successful. So guys, time is flying. I'm starting to see more questions come in, which is good. So I want to just segue into our next section, which I think is going to be hugely important to the attendees around really telling the story internally and actually achieving ROI. So we know that we just covered a successful rollout isn't just about getting past implementation day. It's that ongoing iteration, learning, improving, and driving that ultimate long-term value. So I think just to explore this further, let's dive in. And Kate, I know you've been doing a lot of talking, but I'm gonna pick on you before we go back to Bronwen. But when firms think about ROI, or maybe just want to talk about your firm, Moss Adams, sometimes we can see the focus can be on cost savings, which is always an element. But beyond pure financial returns, what qualitative benefits have you seen? So giving you an idea, things like efficiency, client experience, employee experience, and satisfaction, et cetera. So yeah, anything you want to add there?
Yeah, we've created a ton of transparency in our process as a result of the technology implementation. We are seeing that our employees are understanding the impact that the technology could have on their clients, as well as the impact it could have on their individual career growth, the impact that engaging with resource management could have to impact their external clients. And we're also seeing leaders who are able to leverage data and metrics that were not previously available to them, and they're able to leverage them in a more confident way, not to make a singular decision based on that data, but to bring that into the information that they already have to impact business decisions, impact other leadership conversations. So we're certainly seeing a lot of really great benefits, and I think we'll continue to build on that as we move forward.
Yeah, and I think again, what we've seen a lot is, okay, new system is live, changes happen. Okay, we've done our job, check. But I know, Kate, you're very much looking at how do we continue to iterate, keep employees engaged in and out of the system, and fostering a long-term culture of technology adoption. So what strategies have been most effective for you and continuing to keep these employees, engaged and open to change?
Yeah, we have been engaging people through what we call champion or super user groups to organize and listen to feedback, to allow them to bring feedback from their peers into conversation with folks at the firm who can actually evaluate enhancements that need to be made to our processes or that should be submitted to the technology tool. And that has helped keep people invested in those conversations and keep things moving forward. When they can see that they're involved, they're being heard, and that they're actually making a difference in updates to process or updates to the tool. We've also been able to really streamline some of our training. So both training for new hires, existing team members, and on-demand job aids. So if we think back to when we had different systems, we didn't have consistent process. Training looked very different for different groups across the firm. Folks might have needed to get one-on-one training from their resource management team on a technology versus today, we are really able to provide that training in so many different ways that are consistent, but that folks can access on their own, and they can see a benefit immediately from being able to leverage those materials. The materials are continually being updated, so they're fresh, and that provides more confidence in the tool and the technology when they're seeing that updates are being made and they have access to the best answers to their questions at the time, and they're not just looking at documentation from 3 or 4 or 5 years ago that's been sitting out there.
Some really, really great insights there. Really, really appreciate that. So kind of going back to more of the quantitative ROI benefits and really measuring specific business improvements, I'm going to pass it over to Rob to dive a little bit deeper with Bronwen. Over to you, Rob.
Thank you, Ryan. Bronwen, got a few questions for you. So I'll start with the first, which is, as it relates to measurable impact, since implementing new technology, what kind of tangible improvements have you seen at your firm? Have you noticed any changes in audit quality, staff productivity, or client collaboration?
Yeah, sure. I think the easiest, or that you get a feeling that if we start at the beginning where we spoke about challenges and pain points, is the noise of that has reduced. So I think that's one of the biggest or tangible improvements that you can feel, is people aren't jumping and shouting on this issue anymore. And where you have sort of ring-fenced deployments and other offices or other teams get a whiff of this something new, is you get those audit teams or individuals reaching out to you saying, I've seen this, it looks amazing, I've seen the impact that has had on their job, or I was involved in that job, I don't have access to it yet in my office, please can I have it? So I think those are immediate ways that you can feel this is really making an impact. Another way is, of course, with audit quality, they of course do their inspections, and again is seeing those fewer identifications where that's gone wrong, and that it is the software now doing its job, because you have that consistency of your outputs. It also, you hear from partners saying that they've seen the difference, and that they've got peace of mind now, knowing that if they've completed that certain task, or their team member has, that's just one less item that they need to worry about, because they know it's gone through the channels. By completing that task through the software, that's met the requirements for them, so they can focus on other areas. So quite a few areas that you can see that tangible impact and difference.
Yeah. What you were mentioning there, obviously you being based in the UK and the having the regulatory scores effectively, that was similar to what I was alluding to at the beginning when I said I've seen examples of firms, once they do make the switch, embrace the new technology, there are direct correlations that we've seen of firms who are not the best scoring and going into the highest scoring brackets. So that's some of the really quantifiable items as well. And you make a good point. Some of it's not necessarily quantifiable. You can't give stats and percentages and data for everything, but you know that there's fewer complaints. There are requests that want the new technology. You might not have the exact volumes, but you can tell sufficiently as a business leader that this is having a tangible impact. So that's great examples. Thank you very much. I've got two more for you, and actually, Kate, I'm going to pull you in and get your thoughts on the second question, but one more for you, Bronwen, before we do that. What have you found to be the most effective strategies for keeping employees engaged with the technology over time? So for the longer term, how do you keep the employees engaged, Bronwen?
I think it's similar to what Kate mentioned, having these champion or super user groups, because as much as I can be enthusiastic, people go, oh, that's typical. Of course, Bronwen's going to say that. So having the actual people that are doing it and using it makes a big difference, and them saying something. In addition to that is keeping your foot on the pedal. So it's not, and I think Kate mentioned that earlier, it's not a one-stop action, that you consistently have to push through it, because you continuously have new hires, changes, acquiring new offices, and they haven't heard the message before, or people get used to their old habits. So it's having those constant check-in points and reminders. We have a Friday CPD half an hour where we touch on these areas, not for something new, but a reminder. Remember this functionality. And we kind of see that in the adoption or the usage rate of certain functionality. Go, oh, this is waning down, perhaps we should respond to that. And I think it's quite useful then speaking to your vendor, because you might get them involved and do a one-time training session with them to come in and remind that. One of the other things that I've found particularly useful is, I sit within the technical team, is shadowing some audits. So it's not a formal review, and you actually get the buy-in that the audit team can be honest with you. I actually didn't know how to use this, and I haven't felt comfortable asking. And you go in there saying that I'm here as a helping hand. I'm not here to throw the stick at you. There's going to be no scoring at the end of this. I'm literally just here for you to help. So that's been quite helpful. So yeah, quite a few things that you can do.
I think that's an excellent idea, and it marries up to Kate's point earlier of not just thinking about get it implemented. What does day 1 and day 100 look like, and how do you continue to? I think your phrase was keep the pedal down, because they're not short-term projects. You can't have short attention spans and get distracted by the next exciting thing. So just having that mindset going in, I think, is really handy. So great thoughts. The last question I'd like to actually put to both of you. I'll give you a breather there, Bronwen, and maybe start with you, Kate, if I may. But this is going to be a question I'd like both of your input on. So, Kate, starting with you, what's next for your firm in terms of tech and innovation? And are there any exciting changes on the horizon that you're able to share?
Yeah, I think the implementation of one resource management technology solution across our firm, it's really expanded the way that we can utilize that data across other platforms and existing dashboards that we have. It's already increased data integrations with other systems and given us that really big holistic picture of our firm-wide performance metrics related to resourcing. It has also created a source of truth for resourcing data, and we do expect that's going to impact future tax and assurance technology solutions and capabilities that we are working right now to implement. Those implementation teams are able to leverage and understand and utilize the resource management data to impact the efficiency of our assurance and our tax processes. And there are a lot of really exciting conversations happening right now related to that, which is just wonderful to be able to build off of something that we have now to impact other connected areas of our business. And we're also continuing to innovate our resource management strategy, focusing on how do we enhance our experience for our employees? How do we find them meaningful work opportunities? How do we measure that and be able to showcase that information back to them and see it turn around and positively impact our external clients? So we've got a lot in the works there and a lot of connections across different teams.
Yeah, exciting times. Sounds like you're going to be staying busy, but certainly exciting times. But Bronwen, how about you? What's on the horizon at your firm?
I think we can't talk about tech without talking about AI. So yeah, it's the integration of sound, reliable, and consistent AI practices within audit, as well as that further software integration between our various vendors, so that there are fewer touch points for both audit teams and our clients. So it's a more streamlined user interface for them.
Fantastic, exciting future, and I'm glad you mentioned AI. You're right, we couldn't get through without talking about AI, but it's the buzz at the moment. But that's the last of the questions that I have. But fantastic answers. Clearly, you're both doing a great job maximizing, monitoring, and the ROI, and seeing those tangible benefits. That's fantastic. That's what we all want to see. So I'm really pleased you're getting those benefits and seeing that. I believe, Ryan, you mentioned earlier we might have had one or two questions pop in, so I'm going to turn it back to you, Ryan, to address any Q&As that might be open and need addressing.
Great. Thanks, Rob. And again, a huge thank you to Kate and Bronwen for sharing your experiences. So yeah, absolutely. We have a few questions that I'm just digging into now. So we'll do it a bit democratically and kind of order of which they came in. And then I'm just gonna sort of designate someone to answer it. And I think, Rob, this question might be interesting to hear from you on it, because we were just talking about AI, but any other upcoming trends in tech that you're most excited about, or that you're seeing impact your customers?
Yeah, it's hard not to lean towards AI, although I'll give you my honest opinion on AI. I sometimes feel it's overused as a buzzword, and that what a lot of is painted as AI these days is more it's robotic process automation or other types of technology. But yeah, in terms of trends, I do think AI, true AI, is at the beginning of finding use cases in audit, and I think there's a lot in that space that's going to develop. But yeah, would I say we're there right now? I don't know that we are. I don't know that the market is quite there with true use cases for AI, but I think it's on the horizon. So I think I'll leave it at that for that one.
Fantastic. Thanks, Rob. Well, this is a huge question. Kate, can I ask you, in your experience, what would you say is the biggest misconception about implementing new technology, if I'm reading that right?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think I touched on it. I think one of the biggest misconceptions is that implementing a new technology is going to solve process or culture issues that have developed within your organization over time. It really just isn't. You need to have an overall change and transformation strategy if you want to see process change along with your technology implementation. And I think another one is that a new technology means that you're going to have to do less or be less engaged. I think there is an assumption we have a new technology, but you're asking me to do something, and I didn't have to do that in my old technology. And yes, being able to explain that to people, explain what the changes are, the differences are, and the benefits, I see that coming up as a misconception often.
Great, thank you, Kate. Going to try to get through as many. So to you, Bronwen, what metrics have been most effective for gaining leadership buy-in? And I'm not sure if they're asking sort of pre or post implementation, but really as you're cascading, the good story of what's happening upstairs to leadership, what sort of quantifiable metrics do they seem to really care about?
Yeah, and I think it actually ties into what just Kate spoke about on misconception. And it's that being able to demonstrate value add, and it's not always going to be on a reduction of costs or increase of efficiencies. So of course, that's what they want to see, the commerciality that yes, there will be a reduction in costs and doing or completing a certain process, or that there will be efficiency in that. But certainly in our highly regulated market is that we are getting superior quality and consistency in our outputs, and that they can rely on that. So being able to demonstrate the quality aspect and the consistency aspect is as important as the cost aspect for metrics for leadership that I've seen.
Awesome, Bronwen. I think we have time for one or two more. So I'm just reading this. I'm going to kind of summarize the question and start with you, Kate. But how do you manage change fatigue, right? So we talked about best practices for change management, but sometimes there just can be too much change. And so, how do you empathize with that and make sure that you're not, overwhelming your staff with too much too soon?
Yeah, absolutely. I think going back to something Bronwen said at the beginning was, are you able to look at your workflow across the year and select times when you may get better employee engagement or interaction from your team members. Are you asking them to make a big change at a time when they're also receiving a big ask to complete their annual evaluation? What can you do to balance the importance of what you need from people with what everyone else needs from them? Because we know through the nature of our business, there are so many high points throughout the year where the workload is so large. And is there anything you can do to kind of reduce or lower that? And I also think it's about making sure that you can put the ask in perspective. Is this something that is essential and urgent? And is there a good reason? Is there something someone's going to gain out of this request to complete a task or manage through a change? Or is it something that we can prioritize at another time? So making sure you understand your business, the flow of business on a larger scale is going to help you manage the change fatigue.
Awesome. Thank you, Kate. And 30 seconds or a minute, if I can ask you, Bronwen, is there anything you want to add to that, what Kate just said?
Yeah, I think it's really communication is key in managing expectations with all stakeholders. And I always think there's more stakeholders than you necessarily first think. And I think we've said it throughout, being transparent and honest about what you're achieving with implementing this, and actually disrupting existing workflows. Maybe they need disrupting. And sometimes you do have to mandate things because the way it's being done is outdated. So sometimes you do have to force people to adopt a new and better way of doing something.
Awesome, Bronwen. Well, I'm sorry we couldn't get to everyone's questions, but we will follow up with you. Once again, a big thanks to everyone who participated. Really good discussion around recognizing the need for investment, how to manage that change, and then how to maximize it over time. So I am going to pass it over to you, Rob, to bring us home.
Fantastic, Ryan. Thank you very much. And actually, just on that last point, there was something Kate said earlier, which I think really helps about when change fatigue. You know, Kate, what you said earlier was having a really strong process around the implementation, that the tech in itself won't solve everything. You know, the best tech in the world won't solve your problem if you haven't got a process for getting it implemented and you don't have the right people on board to see it through. So as well, you know, having that really strong process and not going in with a mindset of, oh, the tech will solve everything. I think that also helps with the change fatigue as well. But that was just dragging us on there, Ryan. Sorry, I took us off script a little bit for a minute, but yeah, I'll wrap us up here because we just have 2 or 3 minutes left. I'll start by saying that the message I hope that we got across today, or I know I wanted to get across today, was what I kind of said at the beginning of, I just hope people aren't in that third school of thought of that tech and investment in tech is just a cost. And it's just not worth it because, you know, we're already seeing firms who are moving ahead of the pack, but in terms of efficiency and quality by investing in tech. So whichever of the other 2 schools of thought you're in, I'm happy. It's just as long as you're not in that third school, which doesn't want to move forward. So really terrific contributions from everyone on the discussion today. So I just want to thank as well Bronwen and Kate and Ryan for participating, and thank everyone for attending. If anyone's interested in continuing the conversation with Inflo on the audit solution side or on Dayshape for their solution side, those QR codes will navigate you to a way of contacting us directly if you want to snap the QR code and have a continued conversation with either Inflo or Dayshape or both of us. Those QR codes will get you in contact. So just want to wrap up by thanking everyone again for attending, and yeah, appreciate everyone's time. Thank you very much. Take care.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks, Ryan.
Bye, everyone.